And looks like it is up and running and everything is good. Hopefully we are live on YouTube, Odyssey, and Rumble. How is everyone doing today? How you doing, Chris?
Good.
I see. Now
Don't
you
see
get
anyone.
silent on me. We've been talking so much in the prep for this. Then I go, how you doing? You're like, good.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, where's the Chris
Yeah.
we all know and love?
I'm a little tired today. It's my off day, so
Yeah.
I'm just
Mine's kind
vegging
of
out.
mine's an elevated
Yeah.
pain day as well, so I'm not 100%.
Oh, yeah. And of course, we all know. And of course, we all know how the government views chronic pain patients.
Yep.
Yeah. No, no, no. You're not in chronic pain. You're just a druggie looking for another fix, and you're using that as a crutch.
Uh,
Yeah, no joke. That one time when you made that comment about opioids, there were actually people in the comments that thought you were a drug addict because they
yeah.
were like, "Shane, I don't think you should be that dependent on opioids. You know, no pain is that bad. It shouldn't be that bad. You know, well,
Well, you try living with it.
yeah. I mean, you've got into further details. You know, it wasn't like you're rich, your back lifting weights or something. It was like a really nasty car accident that
Yeah.
yeah,
Smushed on my whole right side. I've got a steel plate in my arm, a titanium rod in my leg. I got screws everywhere, and yeah, it was not a small thing. It was
yeah,
not a minor bump up.
yeah. That's I can imagine. You don't have to be a doctor to tell you that you're not going to walk away from that without some permanent lifetime, conditions you're
Yeah.
going to have to deal with, you know.
But everyone's like, it's just pain. It's like, okay, so are you telling me you don't mind, like militaries and everyone, torturing prisoners of war because it's just pain? You know?
And yeah, and that's why doctors prescribe pain levels, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, cuz like 1 through 5 is kind of like, it hurts, but it is manageable. Maybe you might need some extra strength over the counter. Like 6 to 7, ooh, yeah, that's pretty bad. 8 to 9, holy crap, we got to get you on some opioids.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's 10, they got to put you in a medically induced coma because the pain could actually kill your immune system, could kill your nervous system.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually
If
heard you
it's
can actually.
sustained, yeah. I mean, I've had tens for like, oh god, what was it like that one time in the hospital? It was like it was one of those cases where just because I'd had to spend like 14 days in the hospital and I'd already been there like 8 or 9, and laying down that much, it's a lot on your rib cage, and it really started hurting, and I could barely breathe. I could only breathe shallow. And so they
Yeah.
tried giving me morphine up to the max, and it didn't do anything. And
Yep.
so then they gave me, I think it was Scalaxin or Meloxicam or something like that. It worked, but it took like 45 minutes to fully kick in. So, for upwards of an hour, I was just, that was a 10.
Yep.
That was a 10. That was awful.
Yeah, that story, you
But
mentioned
above
anything about.
5 is where they say, yeah, you can't sustain that long term above 5.
Yeah, you at the very least take a Tylenol. Yeah.
Well, and if it's above 5, Tylenol isn't going to do all that much.
Yeah.
It'll help. Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. They're only allowed to get your pain level down to like barely tolerable.
Yep.
And even then they lie. I think it was like 2 weeks ago or something I made a video.
Oh, hang on, my mom's calling me.
All right. Cuz they were saying like the OxyContin, oh, that lasts 12 hours. It doesn't. It doesn't. And you take hydrocodone or something like that. They say it lasts 6 hours. It doesn't. It does good to last 3. You can depend on it for 2.5, maybe 3. It's not lasting 6. But the problem is, since the drug companies want to insist that it lasts that long, what they tell the doctors to do is, okay, if they're in more pain, prescribe a higher dosage. When what they should be doing is prescribing a lower dosage more often. And that's a much better way of doing that.
Sorry, my mom called me. What were you talking about?
That's okay. Welcome back, Chris. And I don't see anyone in the chat. I don't know if it's frozen or what.
Hmm.
But I was talking about how the pharmaceutical companies are telling them to but when people are in, because they're maintaining the fiction that these things last 6 hours or 12 hours, depending on which one it is. And
Oh yeah.
what they're telling them to do is, like, if they're in more pain, up the dosage, when what they should be doing is prescribing a lower dosage more often.
Yeah.
Mr. No says,
know.
no one but us chickens. Well, at least it's working. I know
Hmm.
it's working. Anyone over on Rumble? Oh, Finding Zenithian's way over here on Rumble. He's been, let's see. He's going to skip intro on cops. Let's see. Oh, hang on. He's scrolling. Let's see. Recommendations for future streams. I'll copy all these as usual. My nickname for Joe Biden is Racist Joe. Yeah, all the stuff he did, especially as senator, with his best buddy Strom Thurmond, the KKK Grand Dragon.
Though he made the smartest, most wisest decision of all of his political career.
He
finally realized, holy crap, I'm getting too old for this shit. And I'm funny how the media's like, oh, he's being so brave and courageous and humble. It's like, no, the guy's doing it because it's reaching the point. Like, the guy's clearly in an early stage of dementia, and it's finally starting to show through, you know.
And he thanks me for going after PragerU and the Manhattan Institute on Mass Incarceration. You're welcome. And don't mention to Actual Justice Warrior, or for that matter, John Lott and Ruined Leon, I'm not sure who that is, of all its drawbacks, such as being a strain on taxpayers. And he says, I'm getting sick of pain patients and the opioids being vilified, especially when those doing the besmirching claim to be for drug legalization, points at Drug War Rant and the Free Thought Project. Yeah.
Yeah. They only want the fun drugs like pot to be banned, you know. Yeah. Opioids or stuff like that. Oh, that's evil, toxic money that the evil capitalist corporations use to addict you and make you permanently sick. Yes.
Yeah, so now we got that decision saying that, oh, the whole bankruptcy deal for the Sackler family doesn't count, and now everyone can go after them for it, which what they're not saying in the news media is that's a raw deal for everyone who already worked out deals with them, because those all got invalidated. And they're not getting any money out of that. They got to sue them all over again.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people need to realize about these legal proceedings and all that is, yeah.
I mean, everyone thinks that arbitration is like, oh, they're just putting him into this, fake thing where they have the bias. Okay, first of all, no, there have been studies done. If anything, arbitration is much more fair than the legal system, but it's also a lot faster and cheaper.
Oh yeah,
you're much more likely to get a good result from them than you are from
I remember watching a John Stossel special about this, and he says, it's one thing a lot of those ambulance chasing lawyers will never tell you is that if you win a lawsuit, you hear stories that's like, it's like, I won a lawsuit and I got a $1.4 million settlement, but here's the thing, most of that money does not go to the person filing the lawsuit.
Well, usually, like, if you're the only defendant and you file it, the lawyers will take like 35% contingency or something like that. But the problem is when you get these massive lawsuits with not only tons of defendants, but a class action suit, the lawyers are going to make out like bandits and everyone else gets like pennies because it has to be divided up among all of the class actions. But the lawyers are still getting their full amount.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, even if you are just like one or two defendants, still, not only does the lawyer take a bunch of the money, but also the government's going to take a lot of that money. There's other court fees that you have to pay for, like that. Like, I've seen interviews with people, that have have gotten out of lawsuits and all that. And even the ones that, felt that kind of, generally had an understandable reason for suing, even they said, I kind of regret it. I probably should have taken it to arbitration rather than lawsuit because it caused a lot of unnecessary stress and I lost most of the money I lost most of the money I won in the following court proceedings and all that.
Yep, the court proceedings are expensive. They're time consuming. You're probably looking at 3 years at least. It's nothing at
Oh
all like you
yeah,
see on TV.
yeah,
Trust
yeah.
me,
It's
I've
not
been
like
through it.
it's not like what you see on TV where like you file a lawsuit, then months later you're in court and either the jury finds them legally responsible, or the company says, okay, listen, if we give you guys $1 million, will you go away? It's not like that. It's like that one cringy movie we had to watch. We had to watch when I was taking intro to law in high school. It was about that lawsuit because that tannery company was being accused of leaking chemicals that was killing children because it was giving them cancers and all that. And supposedly it was based on a real life case. And the movie basically said, yeah, the company got away because they had they paid all the money and had the best lawyers. And I looked up the actual incident, and the reason why the company quote unquote got away was because the thing that the film didn't tell you is that they weren't the only tannery company there. There were a lot of tannery businesses in that area, all of whom were independent, and some of them admitted, yeah, we just throw our stuff out, so the
And
chemicals that were
let the other tannery company take the blame for it.
yeah. The only reason the law firm went after the big tannery company in the area wasn't because it was responsible, it's because they have money, Not only does a small tannery firm, even if they are the ones causing the pollution, suing them, is not only not going to bring a lot of money, it also looks bad in PR.
And getting back to the opioids, there's a growing amount of literature. Not enough for me to really do a video on it, but there's a growing amount of literature that says that the people who get addicted specifically to opioids, not necessarily other drugs, but people who get specifically addicted to opioids have certain genetic markers in common, which strongly suggests that it's genetic. And if you have these markers, you take opioids, you're likely to get addicted. If you don't have these markers, you don't get addicted.
Well, yeah, I
And
mean, I
and
think
so
we
they don't know exactly what genes are doing it or the mechanism or anything or how it actually works. But that's what it looks like in terms of opioids. It looks like whether or not you get addicted is down to your genetics.
Mm.
And if you don't have those genes, you will never ever become addicted to opioids. You might become addicted to something else, but not opioids. And so there would be no reason for you to be restricted like that. And I mean, even with the CDC, reversing course and trying to do an Orwellian rewrite on their quote unquote guidelines and saying, yeah, we didn't really mean that. It's still the case that, they were saying, okay, well, now doctors can be more relaxed and be freer to prescribe opioids, but they're not.
Oh yeah,
Because they're just too afraid of losing their licenses, being sued, and everything else.
Oh yeah, John also brought that up. A lot of people, always complain. It's like, it always seems like every time I go to the ER, they always run all these tests or give me medicines that deep down, I personally don't think I need. I think they're trying to gouge me. And several doctors have come forward and said, yeah, we do order tests and assign medicines that you probably don't need. But contrary to popular belief, it's not because we're trying to gouge you. It's because we're covering ourselves litigation wise.
Yeah, because if they miss one thing, and it's a
Yep.
rare thing, but you could still sue them for malpractice, and it's crazy.
Yep. Oh yeah, because a lot of people, go to the hospital thinking they have like those rare diseases from Dr. House, when the fact of the matter is those things you're almost never happen.
Which is why they're rare.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why they have that term in the medical industry which they call the zebra effect. Whereas if you're sitting on a bench and you hear the sound of hooves clopping and you look up to see what it is, expect to see a horse, not a zebra.
Unless you've specifically ruled out a horse or you're in
Yeah.
Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on the
But
context.
that's prior probability.
Yeah.
And that's why they ask you, people are always like, well, before they do this test, they ask me all these personal questions. Well, yeah, because they're trying to
Yeah.
establish a better prior for your risk factor, and that's going to better inform the test results.
Yeah, it's they can't just quote unquote test you for everything,
Well, I mean, they can test you for something, but I mean, if it's something that's, I've got a video on this, if it's like, 0.1% of the population that has it, and you get, even if it's like a 90% accurate test, if it comes back positive, you're still more likely not to have it than to have it, because the false positives are going to be, that 10% of, a group that's 1,000 times bigger.
Yep.
And so you need to try to narrow it down more.
Oh, yep. Yeah, I mean, and people are wondering why healthcare is so expensive and why there's a mass shortage of doctors and nurses and all that.
That's what 60 or 70 years of government meddling gets you.
Yep.
Hello, Night Shift.
That's another thing too, because people, doctors misdiagnose, because like one thing I hate, because I have seen this in some like TV show dramas and all that, is a doctor makes a misdiagnosis and it's automatically the doctor's fault. It's like, you weren't treating me like a human and you weren't listening to me. It's like, doctors are humans, and given the state of the U.S. medical service, a lot of doctors and nurses, they are exhausted. They're working regularly
Yeah.
12-hour shifts. Sometimes double that.
Without even much of a break. And
Yeah. I was actually thinking of doing a comic strip this idea, and it was about and it would have been like a medical drama, and it would make fun of the politics go behind there. And I have this funny idea for a character where he's I don't know what the term is, but he's like a training, a doctor in training, and he's like doing like a residency and all that, and he's really good. He passed his medical school with flying colors, but he can't officially do anything without permission or supervision, because he hasn't officially had his medical license. And the running gag is that every time he applies for his medical license, he keeps getting told, oh yeah, we hit our quota, so we can't grant you your medical license.
yeah,
Even
that
though
works.
he's good, and everyone likes him, and the doctors that supervise him say, yeah, this guy has everything it takes to be a doctor. The AMA is like, yeah, but we hit our quota, so we're not approving of him.
It's an artificial shortage.
Yep.
Also, they can get paid more.
Yeah.
But that also means that the interns, and then I forget what it's called, the stage you're in after an inter-resident.
Yeah, I think
those are the ones who are really overworked.
Oh yeah, because they want to do this for a living, and they have to do this for pretty much no pay or little or minimal pay and all that. And the only reason they're staying in there is because they want to go to the medical field, but they're waiting for the AMA to get their asses off to give them their doctor or nurse's license.
Yep.
Whatever happened to the days where the only thing you needed to do to get your medical license was to demonstrate that you got proper medical schooling, from a well-respected, medical area.
Yeah, you just needed a degree from an accredited university, and that's it. Then you can hang up your shingle.
Yep. Yeah, then you can just buy a bankrupt McDonald's, and set up your own little mini walk-in clinic. Yeah, which used to,
and you'd see prices go down, and you'd also see things like I think it was John Stossel that covered this, or maybe it was Freakonomics, one of them. They were talking about these clinics that said, you know what, we're not going to take insurance. You can file it with your own insurance if you want, but we're not going to deal directly with the insurance companies. And just how much cheaper it made everything. And one of the things they were saying was that when they got, that bag of saline that they hang when they want to hydrate you, and then they put the drugs in with the saline and everything else, but the bag itself is just saline. Back when they were a clinic working with the insurance companies and the negotiated prices and everything, every time they'd hang a bag of saline, they'd charge the patient $10 for it. And they found out, to their surprise, they didn't even know that those things only cost like 45 cents or something like that. And they said, why are we charging patients for it at all? So they just, have it, there's just like included. The bags of saline were just free, as part of
that's what,
regular fees.
that's what I hate about Adam Ruins Everything when he was doing his thing about the hospital, is that he was talking about how, yes, it's overpriced at the hospital, but he believes that the hospital's in on it, when the fact of the matter is, it's just because, when costs are collectivized and spread throughout, the true cost of something gets lost,
Well, and they're caught in a tug of war between the government requirements, the demands of the insurance companies, and the demands of malpractice insurance providers. Yep. And when you do that, and then you're forced to say, okay, well, we put a price cap on this procedure, you can't charge any more for it, but that procedure is risky, so it increases your medical amount and everything else. Those costs have got to come from somewhere, and that's why they charge you $10 for an aspirin.
Oh, yep.
They got to make those costs back somehow.
Reminds me of those, and it also reminds me of those ambulance chasers that are like, oh, don't worry, if you sue a company and all that, don't worry, they have insurance, so you're not taking money from the workers and all that. And I'm like,
yeah, you are.
Where do you think that money's coming from?
Yep. They got to pay it from something.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but I remember reading somewhere, that's why we're seeing a lot of these stories about how insanely risky, delivering babies are nowadays. People are like, what's going on? I remember, like you see older OBGYN saying, I don't remember it being this bad before. And one of the reasons is because, for fear of lawsuits, if there's even one minor complication that happens with the pregnancy, it can be something very minor. It's very tempting for a doctor under pressure to say, okay, yeah, we don't want to risk it. Prep this one in for a C-section. And C-sections are riskier, they're more painful, and they're more expensive.
But if they don't do the C-section and something goes wrong, malpractice.
Yep.
And it just goes to like what Joe Biden was saying with the when he was like, I'm going to get the price of your medicine down. I'm going to get the price of your insulin down. I'm going to get the prices, all these things down. We're going to do price caps. And it's like, okay, that'll get the nominal price down. But like I said, it just means you'll pay for it somewhere else because they've still got to make that back.
Also, your camera keeps going on and off.
Yeah, that's me. I turn it off when I'm doing something. I'm still...
Oh.
I was kind of rushed getting everything prepared here, so I'm still getting things situated.
Yep, and
when it says this space intentionally left blank, I'm doing that on purpose.
And some people say, well, why don't we just make it so the hospital can't overcharge everything? Let's cap basically every single itty bitty little thing they have. Well, first of all, that's impossible because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be accounted for. And second of all, even if, like, let's say you did do that, you know what's going to happen? A lot of people are going to say, screw it. I'm not setting up a hospital. This is bull crap. I'm not getting involved. And then you have a shortage of hospitals and doctors.
And then when you do try it, they'll say, oh, well, you need to get a statement of need. You need to get the other hospitals in your area to agree that there should be a new hospital. In other words, the people you're going to compete with.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. Craziness.
I mean, this didn't involve healthcare, but it involved charter schools and all that. And it reminds me when John Stossel was interviewing, like the heads of the teachers unions about charter schools and all that. And one of them was like, look, I don't give a crap about charter schools. I just don't want them in my area and all that. It's like, why? Why can't they be in your area? Well, why? Why? Would Fox and CBS want to be in the same building? And John Stossel's like, no, but we can't ban them from owning a building and operating in the same area as us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Why wouldn't you want to? What's the? I don't get the left. I mean, I do. They don't want competition. They want a monopoly in education, but
yeah,
that's their whole opposition to everything.
And I brought this up before, I think on a previous podcast, but so many people like to go, oh, but have you heard about, bad charter schools or bad independent hospital clinics where they did all this and that and how they got shut down? And I'm like, yeah, that's a sign that the market's working because
they did get shut down.
Yeah. That's what I tell people all the time when they talk about, did you hear about this one charter school that was abusing children and it got shut down? And I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing. What would have happened if the public school had done it?
Well, that had happened a number of years ago.
Mm,
And people were saying, oh, see how this charter schools are bad. It was up in Catawba County. And it was the case where one of the administrators was like laundering money or something, or was doing all these financial crimes and ended up driving it bankrupt. And then he got school and he got sued and the charter school got shut down. I think he even got arrested.
mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, see, that's where the charter school's bad. All I did was a simple internet search, and in just a few minutes, I had found like 3 different schools in the same area where the administrators had been caught doing almost the exact same scam, except nothing bad happened to them, nothing bad happened to the schools. You know, parents kind of raised a little bit of a stink, and politicians promised, well, we'll do better, and, you know.
Yeah.
But after that happened to the charter school, you better believe that all the other charter schools in North Carolina were looking at that going, oh boy, how can we prevent that from happening?
Another thing too that the anti charter school people seem to think is that they're like, oh, but it's public money for private school. Well, if I recall correctly, most charter schools are not
No,
private schools.
no, they're public
They're
schools. They're not private. They're public schools.
yeah, they're just alternative schools that
They're
that
not
typically
done with the local school district. They're managed by their own
yeah,
administrations.
yeah. So they're still technically publicly owned schools, but they're run more like a business.
They're also not like, districtized, like you can, if you go to this place, you got to go in this school, and it's like, oh, I want my kids in a better school, so I have to move.
Yeah.
Well, like the way it works in North Carolina is,
Oh yeah,
if
yeah.
you're a North Carolina resident, your kid can go to any charter school in the state. You have to get them there. So, you're not going all the way across the state, a 4-hour drive or anything. But yeah, there's no limitation on like the districts like that.
I can't remember which Carolina it was, but when John Stossel did Stupid America, he actually interviewed the governor at the time, of I don't know if it was North or South Carolina.
I think that was South Carolina because I think he was in favor of school choice.
Yeah, of school choice and charters and all that. And when he implemented it, all the teachers unions, read in the air.
Yep.
Yep. Even though the test scores and the quality of the school went up, I
Well,
also
and
remember that.
they're saying they haven't learned their lesson. They're saying the same stuff with Trump they said about Reagan. If he gets elected, he's going to eliminate the Department of Education and federal funding of schools. It's like, well, I hope so.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's going to do it or not, but that'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
So let's,
Yeah. Speaking of Trump, I saw this video about Mentis Wave. You've heard of Mentis Wave, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did a video of the Trump assassination attempt, and he actually brought up a pretty good point. And this is why the news media is, brandishing all these conspiracies. It's to distract them from the fact that, like, they're not 100% to blame, and the blame is still on the would-be assassin, but they might be partially responsible for, these attempts on Trump's life because, like, listen, you are spending 24 hours writing all these stories saying, oh, Trump is evil, Trump's the next Adolf Hitler, Trump's worse than Pol Pot. It's tempting. I'm pretty sure for some deranged people out there, they see that and they go, oh, so that means he's fair game? If I shoot him, I'll be a national hero?
Well, and then they started lying about the kid and saying things like, oh, he was a loner, he was in with the wrong crowd, he was failing. And it turns out he was a very popular, well-liked kid. He had good grades and all sorts of things. So now they're trying to blame encrypted apps, of course.
Yeah.
But it's like they did so many screw-ups. And I think it was Robert Gouveia, one of the law tubers, did the thing where he was like showing like different levels of culpability. Like the bottom level is no culpability. And then the level above that is negligence. And then you have gross negligence above that. And I think gross negligence is what they have when they're just, because they knew about this guy for like an hour and they were just ignoring it.
Yeah, there were people. Yeah, I've heard there were people, saying, hey, there's a suspicious looking guy. And some people were saying, I think he's got a gun. I don't know what he is. And basically the cops were just like, okay, we'll take an eye on it. And I recall correctly, there was one cop that went to investigate, and he literally ran away and called for backup rather than
Well,
trying to stop the
well,
perpetrator.
no, what had happened was he was a local cop. He wasn't the Secret Service. The Secret Service was in charge of it. They just had the
Oh,
local cops there to do traffic control, but they were like, there's a guy up on the roof. What are they doing? The one guy hoisted the other guy up to the edge of the roof, and he was holding himself up on the edge of the roof, and he saw the guy, and the guy turned his gun at him, and he panicked and fell, and I think he like broke his ankle or something like that.
oh, yeah.
But yeah, that wasn't the Secret Service. But yeah, they knew about the guy, and so like above gross negligence, you have recklessness, which recklessness would basically mean you knew something like that was going to happen, and you let it happen. And then above that is actual.
There are some conspiracies out there that said that there might have been some anti-Trump people within the Secret Service, that really wanted him dead. So they're like, oh, let's just look the other way.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if that happens, but I kind of doubt it will. But even I think it's just good old-fashioned incompetency because people fail to realize, the Secret Service is not as good as people think it is.
Over on Rumble, we got a couple more from Fighting Zenithian. Reagan expanded the size of government, ditto for Trump and Bobby Jindal. Yeah, I got a video on how Reagan was not really small government. He might have been smaller government than the Democrats, but that was just raising it by not as much.
Yeah.
And he says, I consider Mentis Wave an imitation of esoteric entity. Sure, he has some good rebuttals, but at the same time has arguments that come off as sophistic and ignore obvious flaws. And have you considered debunking Mr. Beat's Best 10 American Governors video? I haven't seen that. I'll put it on the list. Fixing and eating dinner when you start. Oh, enjoy your dinner.
Okay.
Don't stop eating on my account. And Darius explains, says in Newark, New Jersey, Oprah and Mark Zuckerberg gave $100 million to the schools. Yeah, I'm sure it all went to the students and not in any administrator's pockets.
Oh yeah, it's funny because there's that one famous, you're familiar with SpongeBob SquarePants, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the character Mr. Krabs, there's a famous scene, I think it's from the episode Can You Spare a Dime, where Mr. Krabs is on the phone and he's like, donate to the children's fund. Why? What have children ever done for me? And I actually saw a YouTube comic that brought up a pretty good point that in a way Mr. Krabs, he actually has an understandable reason for rejecting it because, there's a lot of scammy charity organizations out there,
Well, and it's like years ago there was like in my county they had a 0.5-cent sales tax on the ballot, and they always put these things on the primary ballot because they know not a lot of voters will show up and they can get it passed more easily. But they were always they didn't say vote to raise your taxes. They said vote for the children because it's supposed to go for education. Vote for the children. Vote for the children. And I'm like, is it going to go to the children? And guess what? It didn't. It's all gone into politicians and administrators and bureaucrats' pockets.
Oh yeah, I mean, sad. It happens with regular charity organizations too. It's like we're here to donate to the Save the Babies Foundation. So you give them $100,000, and where's that money go? It goes to the organizers.
But at least with a charity, you don't have to.
Yeah, that's the thing too. With the charity, you can say, yeah, you at the very least can say humbug and walk away.
Yeah.
To be fair, when you really think about it, like those guys that were hounding Ebenezer Scrooge, because they wanted to provide, food for the poor on Christmas Eve, like, I get where they were coming from, and while yes, Ebenezer Scrooge came off as mean and cold, what I would have said is like, well, I mean, that's what you're doing, but I gotta ask you something. How's giving them steak and potatoes for one night actually gonna help them in the long scheme of things?
He actually says that in the book.
Mm.
I feed them for a day and they starve tomorrow or something like that. I forget exactly how it goes.
Yeah.
And besides, is my tax money paying for welfare?
Yeah, I mean, that's funny because I've actually heard that because I haven't read the original book, but I've actually heard that if you read the original book, you kind of sympathize with Scrooge at one point because he does bring up some pretty valid points,
Yeah, you kind of get his point of view.
Yeah, That's why I'm gonna say this. That's why I love the George C. Scott version because I think he's the
He
one
was
that
great.
portrayed it. Yeah, because everyone else portrayed Ebenezer Scrooge as either like Mr. Krabs or they portray him as like a cranky old man that hates everyone and everything. George C. Scott, portrays him the most accurately. He's not like this grumpy old man or this guy who hates everyone or everything. He's just one of those guys where he just became apathetic and he doesn't care anymore.
Yeah, he's basically suffering from dysphoria of some kind.
Yeah.
Finding Zenithian over on Rumble. Regarding the conspiracy theory surrounding Trump, I'd wait until all the evidence is available. Yeah, you do have that fog of war for the first few days, but I think by now, and I'm working on a story like this for the podcast because Newsweek just brought up the broken glass thing. Oh, Trump wasn't really hit by a bullet. He was hit by a shard of broken glass from the teleprompter. And for like over a week now, people have been showing pictures of the teleprompters after it was over, and they're intact.
Yep.
So, shrapnel from what? Glass for what?
Yeah.
It was a bullet.
I agree with what Mentis Wave said about that. Is that he does think that it should be investigated, but the problem is that, and I'm pretty sure we know this is going to happen, is that the government's going to send an investigation team. It's not going to be independent.
Yeah, that we're already seeing that with how they're trying to evade questions by Congress.
Yeah. Like, I know this is really...
Finding Zenithian says, shame what happened to Stephen Hillenberg. I don't know who that is.
Oh, that's the founder of SpongeBob. Yeah, he died. ALS, yeah.
Oh, that's not good. ALS is terrible.
Oh, yeah. He retired from the show for a while, and then... and then completely out of the blue, he returned and he started working on SpongeBob again, and... shortly after he did that, I mean, they didn't announce it until he died, but the people that worked with him later discovered why he came back, and he told a handful of his friends in secret saying, yeah, guys, I've been feeling kind of funny, so I went to the doctor, and it's ALS, and I don't have much time, and, I want to come back, and I want to, work on SpongeBob some more before I go, basically.
Well, and that's how it is. You go downhill, and then it looks like you might be a little better, and then you do the final crash. That's what happened with Harry Brown, because he bowed out of, the public eye and his radio show and everything, because he was suffering just from an unspecified neurological disorder. And like several months later, he came back. He was like, well, I'm feeling better. We're not really sure what this is, but he was back for like, I think 2 months. Then he went downhill and died.
Mm. It's the dumbest argument I've heard about, that people are saying against unschooling and all that, is people are like, unschooling's bad because look at all these stories I'm reading about how parents can't get their kids to learn how to properly read and all that. And I just want to say this. Okay, if the parents, people who know their child the best and have the closest relationship with them in theory, can't get them to read, what makes you think a total stranger who you don't know is going to get them to read?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they learn to read at home. By and large, kids don't learn to read at school. They learn some things about reading at school, but they...
Oh, yeah, I mean, John Sasso did this in Stupid in America, where he was interviewing some parents and grandparents, and there was this one grandmother who used to be a teacher herself, and she was shocked that her grandson and granddaughter could barely learn how to read and write and spell. She says they spent a summer with me, and when they returned, they're honor roll students. They can read and read pretty good, and they know their numeric values 1 through 20.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids were basically reading and counting to 20 before they went to kindergarten.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I don't want to sound like Joe Rogan or anything, but I think, those stories about, unschooling fails, I think it's just, lazy parents,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how unschooling works, but I imagine it has to be different than neglecting your kid all day.
Yeah, I've met some people that talk about that, because the funny thing is that so many people are like, oh, but homeschool kids, have poor social skills and all that, and they've seen interviews with them. It's like, no, they don't. Well, but how are they going to socialize and all that? And the parents are like, we take them out with us,
Yeah, there's lots of things, activities for kids to do.
Yeah. Honestly, that's why one South Park episode I really hate is Hooked on Monkey Phonics, because Matt Stone and Trey Parker said in the commentary that, they were trying to show that, homeschool children, have poor social skills and, you're irresponsible if you're homeschooling them. But here's the thing. In that very same episode, after one of the kids gets bullied and he tells his parents, the parents go to the parents of the kids that bullied him, and they said, hey, my son, your son, beat up my son pretty badly. I want you to know that. And what did the parent respond? What? Are you criticizing my child? I'll kick your ass. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the reason that kid's bullying,
Yep.
Yeah, So it's like, Matt and Trey, you defeated your own argument in there. The kids are being assholes, not because those kids, the homeschool kids are socially awkward and are easy targets. It's because the kids, who picked on them are being raised by, let's be real, not the most pleasant people,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that old PSA. Why did you start doing this? Why? I learned it from watching you. That's actually one of those cases where the PSA is kind of correct, because from what I understand, children, they watch,
Yeah. My favorite version of that, though, is in A Christmas Story. Is "Oh fudge," but I didn't say
Yeah.
fudge.
Oh,
And the
Oh,
mother
yeah,
was
and the
like,
mom's
"Where
like-
did you hear that?" Now I had heard my old man say that word for so many
Yep.
times, but he chickens out and blames his friend.
yeah, and blames his friend, and his poor friend gets a spanking, without
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
That is a movie that really understands what it's like to be a kid.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and yeah, and some people are like, well, a Christmas movie, shows the kids, being mean and all that. And I like how the guy explains, it's like, yeah, a lot of the stuff we did was evil and mean, but you got to remember, we were kids. Back then, the rules were different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's survival of the fittest in there. That's why nobody came forward, when Finn had to be rescued, from the frozen pole.
Yeah.
Although I have heard from a lot of people say that while it is true that if you stick your tongue to a frozen pole, it can get stuck. They did point out that if it was that cold, they should not be outside for recess. They should be inside, playing board games or something.
Well, ordinarily it would stick for like a couple of minutes until until your body heat warms it up. Yeah. If it's cold enough to stick for that long, it's really cold.
Yeah, it's way too cold to be going outside. You gotta. Yep. Sorry, kids, you're going to the gym and playing board games. Which we have. I remember indoor recess.
I mean, I'm in a state where, they close down the schools if there's a single flake on the ground.
True. Yep.
Rumors of snow and they're closing school.
Yep. Unlike here in the Midwest, where during winter we can get some pretty intense snow where there could be 6 feet of snow, and they're like, we can make it through.
I mean, the thing is, where I am, it's all country roads, so you couldn't really do it anyway. But even the cities don't have the infrastructure to like salt the roads and run snow plows and everything.
Yeah, Christmas week, you remembering what it's like to be a kid. Yeah, that is kind of true, Not gonna lie, it almost kind of makes you wish that there was more, movies involving Ralphie and the Egg, because it would have been nice to see how they act, outside of Christmas,
Yeah, but then usually sequels end up ruining what was good about the first movie.
Yeah.
Is my chat
Like,
stuck?
I know, yeah, because I have heard they did make a sequel to A Christmas Story with Ralphie as a teenager, and from what I understand, it wasn't really good.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Oh, Darius gives $2 and says, I would like to come on to StreamYards. Well, we're not on StreamYards, we're on Discord. So easiest way to do it would be to go onto Discord and subscribe directly. But you can do it through Patreon and Subscribestar. It's the same benefit, but you have to go through that extra step of connecting your Discord, to your Patreon account or your Subscribestar account. And if you haven't done that already, if you've already done it, it'll work, but it's just extra steps. But you can do it directly on Discord now and come straight in.
Hey.
It's just
Darge
it's just
explains
where
SE.
we do it. I mean, God, I tried so many different things because we used to do it on Google Hangouts and they shut that down.
Yeah.
And I went through like 3 or 4 different things before I just got to Discord, and it just worked easier on Discord.
Yeah.
I tried setting up like a Jitsi server, and then that didn't work. And I don't know. Maybe I could look for alternatives if anyone has any good ideas, because I haven't looked in a few years. But
I will say, it's one scene that I always
I know
like.
StreamYards, they scam because they're supposed to. Oh, there's okay. That took a while for it to show up. There's me dancing. That's supposed to happen whenever you give a super chat. But anyway, there was supposed to happen where StreamYards is supposed to give you like a 1 month free trial or something like that. I signed up for it, and then they said your free trial is expired. I'm like, what? I just signed up, and then I couldn't get customer support or anyone to get back to me. So.
Anyway, as I was saying, it's one scene. It's one scene that I kind of like from A Christmas Story when Ralphie finally has enough and he stands up to the bully and beats him up.
Yeah.
Remember
That's
when you
cathartic
could
for so many of us.
we
Wish we could have done that.
Yeah, remember when you could do that without being accused of being a. Yeah, because here's the thing that people fail to realize. One reason why a lot of kids don't stand up to their bullies is not because they're too afraid. It's because if they do stand up, what happens? You get thrown into detention with the bully, and he kicks your ass.
Oh, not even with the bully. They just get off scot-free. You don't even fight back, and you get in trouble a lot of times because, well, we think you did something to provoke it. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
That was what I got all the time. We think you did something to provoke him.
I mean, I've heard
that. If you dared to fight back, oh my God. Yeah. I don't know why they kept protecting the bullies, but they always protected the bullies.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying fighting is right, but I have heard, from some boomers, like from people who are slightly older than you that said, listen, they were like, look, back in my day, if you wanted to get a bully off your back, you had to fight him. You didn't even have to win. All you had to do was just show that you had enough and you were willing to throw a punch at him. And by that point on, he realized, yep, you're not a target anymore. That's what they said. You don't even have to win. You just have to demonstrate, hey.
In reality, they come back with 5 of their friends and do it.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
All right, Zenithian says, I prefer to keep Discord on desktop PCs and not on laptops and mobile devices. Mine's fine on laptop, but I get why you don't want to do it on mobile.
Yeah.
Why are so many skeptics or leftists when socialism, communism has a history of those who dare to question it? I got a whole series on why statism of all sorts, but including and especially socialism and communism, is just another religion.
Yeah.
And they use the same fallacies as the religious do to support them. And yet skeptics are like, well, I'm a skeptic, and then yay the state, yay socialism, libertarians are stupid.
Yeah, it's
There was a Space Invaders board game?
Yeah. When it surprised me, they made a board game based off of Tetris.
Just a cash grab, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up in the era of, I guess they still have them, but they're not as big today. The game shows on daytime TV. And they would always have, here's how you can get a copy of our home game. And it was a board game version of it you could play.
Oh, yeah.
With your family.
Oh, yeah. I've seen videos like that. Yeah. There's a lot of interesting board games out there.
Yeah, but a lot of them are just cash grabs.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them are just like Sorry or Monopoly ripoffs, and
it's like Sorry wasn't so bad, but I never really cared for Chutes and Ladders or Snakes and Ladders. Same game, different. Because absolutely nothing you do makes any difference. Your outcome is determined solely by the die. So you might as well just roll a die and see who wins.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, it's one of those games it's one of those games for like when you're 3 or 4, it's fun. But as you get older, you start realizing, wait a minute, There's no strategy. It's all 100% chance. By this point, we might as well just be flipping a coin and saying, okay, let's flip a coin. Whoever calls it correctly wins.
Well, like with Sorry, you have multiple pieces. You can choose which ones to move. And doesn't it have cards too with it or something like that?
I don't remember. It's been forever since I played.
Oh yeah, I think
Sorry.
you turn over cards and you can make different decisions. It's not just chance, like
Yeah.
Shoots and Ladders.
Hmm. I think they started getting rid of those pieces though because it's like think about the choking hazards. Hmm. Speaking of which, it's like no disrespect because I understand he went through a lot, but I really want to find the guy who got lawn darts banned, and I just want to sit down and have a talk with him because I think that guy needed some type of professional help or something.
Yeah, the Discord link is discord.pagosity.tv. It's on your screen, and I just put it into the YouTube
Because like
chat as well.
I'm sorry because he's like well I got it banned because it was in a children's pack and my son threw it at my daughter and he killed her. It's like, why was your son throwing stuff at his sister? Where were you? Like I'm like like nothing, not trying to delegitimize parents that went through tragedy like that, but the sad reality is that you kind of got to own up to some of that stuff because like if your kids are roughhousing and they push another sibling and they fall and they seriously hurt themselves, and you're not present, to make sure it doesn't go too far, that's kind of on you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, at least keep an eye on your kids, know where they are and what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't gotta be a helicopter parent and follow them around 24/7, but you just need to have like a general idea of where they're going and what they're gonna do, Hmm. Yeah, because like so many people are like, but isn't that helicopter parenting? I thought you guys were against it. No, helicopter parenting is where it's like, no, Sonny, I'm not gonna let you apply your own peanut butter on your sandwich. You might put too much on it, and then you'll choke.
Yeah, and when you demand that, no one in the school brings peanut butter because your little Johnny's allergic to peanuts.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like I see those allergy things because we see those conversation with allergy rules and all that, and like everyone's like, well, I knew a person that almost died because they ate at a restaurant and they had an allergic reaction, and I like how someone shut them up by saying, well, didn't he have like an EpiPen on him? It's like, well, he did, but he didn't bring it because he thought he wouldn't need it. It's
I mean, you know your allergies, you know what you have to prepare for, just like with any other
Yeah.
health thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you have bad allergies, even your own allergist will say you should always have it on you because there's always that slim possibility you're going to come into contact with something that came into contact with the thing you're allergic to, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Even restaurants can only do so much.
Because everything, there's someone who's allergic to it with every single thing you can serve.
Yeah,
I'm going to mess up this name, Ray Mayo, whatever, creator for hire. Why I decided not to have children, not with my mental health history, and what I went through with my mom as a teenager and her personality. I mean, it's a lot. I've raised a few kids to adulthood by this point, but it's rewarding too. And there's a middle ground. It's not be a helicopter parent or let your kids go wild and do whatever. There's a reasonable middle ground there for supervising your children, making sure they're safe, but not going overboard with it.
Yeah. I mean, I probably won't ever have kids, but I used to watch a lot of Super Nanny, so I know because like,
it's just about feeling your way through it.
Yeah. I mean, a common theme, I see a lot on like especially Super Nanny, and this was especially common like on the British version because believe it or not, Super Nanny's from the UK and she has a British show. One thing that's pretty interesting because this happened a lot is that there's all these parents that say, I don't know what to do with my kids. My kids are destructive. They beat each other up. They swear and all that. And then finally you go to the house and it's like, well, do you have like discipline and all that? Well, we do. We have all this discipline rules and all that. And then you find out that they have discipline, yes, but they don't have any, times for activities or playtime.
Yeah.
It's like well, no wonder they're destroying your house and they're acting disrespected. They're bored,
Yeah.
you know.
You got to let them give them things to explore, give them things to do, you can give them
Yeah.
activities. Don't force them into any activities they're not interested in because that's counterproductive. But
Yeah, I don't have kids of my own, but I do have a dog, and dogs do the same thing.
yeah,
I've heard that from dog behaviors too. It's like, why is my dog destroying my couch? They're barking excessively. It's all that, and it's like, well, because your dog's a collie mix. It's bored. You
yeah,
know.
and like my dog's getting old, and I guess things happen when your dog gets old, and it's like he's really started whining and howling. Whenever Heather's at work, and then he gets up and he's fine. Then he starts getting antsy because she's not home, and he wants everyone to be home. Found out recently that the thing to do is make sure he's got his nice little proper pillow on the bed, turn the light on, and turn SpongeBob on the TV, and then he'll
Oh,
rest for a
yeah,
while. He just kind of needs, I don't know, he's just got used to it.
Yeah, I've actually heard a common technique if your dog has really bad separation anxiety is try to take like some like some clothing that you've worn a lot and it's got your sweat and all that, but you haven't washed it yet, and give it to your dog because it has your smell on it.
But I guess just the
That way,
noise of it means that something's there. And
yeah.
usually when Heather's back there with him, and I'm still working, in the office or something like that, she has the TV on, and Philo has basically a 24-hour SpongeBob channel that she likes to watch. And so I guess he's just used to SpongeBob being on. But yeah, SpongeBob was what did it.
Rio, that thing for that whole parenting and all that, that's understandable though. The thing I can't handle are like those people that are like, I don't want to have kids because of this that and it's bad, and I want to focus on my own personal mental health and all that. It's like, yeah, it's your choice, but come on, people.
Finding Zenithian is just a typing demon over on Rumble. I've missed a bunch of his, but he talks about the Dungeons and Dragons 1984 cartoon, which, yeah. Well, he goes down to the French Revolution we were talking about in the April AMA. If Robespierre only bumped off the political class, France would have been in a much better shape. Yeah, instead of, getting rid of all the rich, including people like Marie Antoinette, who would have been their biggest allies.
Oh yeah, if I recall correctly, wasn't Marie Antoinette on the side of the revolutionaries? She hated her husband in the political class, but she was married to the royal family, so
yeah, they were just Robespierre was just crazy. He was.
Oh yeah.
He was paranoid, at least. I don't know what else.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I'm not gonna lie. I kind of find it laughable that the French Revolution is so celebrated when the fact of the matter is, it was kind of a failure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, things were better under the monarchy or anything, but it was one of those cases where, like, 'cause here's the thing, they had the American Revolution to look at too. The American Revolution wasn't perfect and was still getting its butt off the ground, but it was doing okay. Basically the French revolutionaries were like, yeah, that thing all those Americans, that the people in America are doing, let's not do that.
Let's do that, only be crazy.
Yeah.
Only be insane. Yeah, and the Finding Zenithian backs us up on parenting. I'm all for having boundaries, but at the same time, let them have their fun. They'll actually have more fun and a lot less stress if they have boundaries, because just by way of analogy, if you've got a balcony but there's no railing, you're going to be afraid to go up to the edge because you're afraid of falling. If you have a railing there, then you'll go up to the edge and look out because you've got that security. And kids are kind of the same way. If you give them reasonable boundaries, if you give them too restricted boundaries, they'll push back. But if you give them reasonable boundaries, then they'll be fine with that, and
I will
they'll
say,
do well.
Granted, I don't have kids and I'm not a child expert, but I've been watching, that TV show from Australia, Bluey, and I mostly like it. There's one minor thing I don't like in some episodes is that is that Bluey, she gets way too far with her play. Like she gets way too lost in it, and she doesn't know when to actually, to what we would call pause the game. Like there's one episode where they're playing, it's basically the equivalent of Floor is Lava, except it's with crocodiles, and they're traveling and they're outside and they're doing it through shadows, and one of her friends is hungry and wants cupcakes, but she won't let her go get a cupcake because, but then the crocodiles will get you. And her friend's like, I'm hungry. I want to get food. It's like, I think, Bluey, you need to learn to pause the game, And a lot of people have also pointed that out. Like, she almost beats up her parents at times. Now, she doesn't mean to do it. Like, she's not doing it out of evil. She's only 7 years old in the show, but someone needs to teach her. It's like, Bluey, you're taking the game a little too far.
Yeah, Darius wants to know how to join the stream. When you get onto that link, you should see all the options to subscribe. To subscribe at any level, I think $2.99 is the lowest one, and then that will magically unlock the live stream channels, and you can just get straight in. It's just a voice channel.
Mr. No, he was a nice guy too. Then he went full psycho. Well, that happens with a lot of politicians. Because contrary to what some and kept saying, I don't think most politicians are genuinely evil people that go in there to do evil stuff. Because there are some people where, if you look at them, like when they were younger, they generally, had some fire in them, and they genuinely wanted to do good stuff. And then my guess is they just became corrupted by the power within the government.
But then you have people like Ron Paul. He stuck to his principles for a long time, and I think the closest we have to Ron Paul now is Thomas Massey, and so we'll see how he does over time.
Yeah.
He just lost his wife, which was a terrible thing.
I mean, I know there's books, that have been written about it that, that goes about, what it's like living in those kinds of structures, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the whole system is set up to basically guide you towards corruption. Yeah. And so unless you're really on the lookout for it, unless you really stand by your principles, then it's an easy thing to go into.
Well, and the sad reality is that, even if you do stand by your principles and don't give into the corruption, because John Stossel was doing a video and he interviewed, some representatives, that were genuine, legit, and they weren't, corrupt and giving it into the corporations. And John Stossel liked them, and he was like, well, how come you guys aren't more active and all that? And he said, because the sad reality is that once it becomes clear that you can't be corrupted, they basically ignore you. Yeah. You basically become a pariah, and every time you raise up an issue, the other representatives and senators just go, yeah, Senator Uncorrupt, just go sit over in your chair and wait for us.
Well, like all of those bills that Ron Paul introduced, that they said, oh, we'll just send this over to committee, and then you never hear from it again.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's how most bills are killed. They literally. That's something that Schoolhouse Rock doesn't tell you.
Well, even in the audit the Fed bill, this gets me because it had so many co-sponsors in both the House and the Senate that even if only the co-sponsors voted for it, it would have still been enough to override a presidential veto. But the speaker was like, okay, we'll just send it over to committee, and then never does anything with it because they have so much power. They can even override a supermajority if they go against it.
Yep, that's something Schoolhouse Rock's song "I'm Just a Bill" doesn't teach you about.
Yeah.
And
we learned that the Libertarian Party here in North Carolina, when we were trying to get ballot access passed, and there was a ballot access reform bill that was really popular, had a lot of popular support, and we had a lot of support in the North Carolina House. And it was like, I think, 4th on the agenda. And so the speaker just went through number 1. It wasn't numbered, but he was reading out what it was. Okay, now we do number 1. Now we do number 2. Now we do number 3. Now we do number 5. And he just skipped over the ballot access bill. It's like, what? And they never got to it. Just because the speaker decided to skip over it.
Yep, that's something that the song "I'm Just a Bill" doesn't teach you about. When a bill dies in committee, 9 out of 10 times, it's intentional.
Yeah, and the speakers and the chairs and the pro tems, They have so much power, and they have the
Yeah.
party apparatchik, behind them, and
Yeah, and the worst part,
even if a majority of them wants to go against it, they can stop it from being introduced.
and the worst part is that, and to be fair, this is something that even libertarians are kind of guilty of. Is that sometimes the problem isn't even the senators or representatives. It's like you said, it's those people within like the committees and all that, because they hold the real power, and they have one benefit that senators and representatives don't have, and that's they have more privacy.
Finding Zenithian says, I miss screwball comedies and parody films. Sure, there was Shaun of the Dead, but it wasn't the same. I think the last really good screwball comedy film I saw was Everything Everywhere All at Once. And that was hilarious. So if you haven't seen that, Zenithian, check it out. Aaron Seltzer and Jason Freeberg are writing the coattails of the Wayans brothers and David Zucker. Yeah, I don't know who Seltzer and Friedberg are.
The Wyan brothers. Huh?
The Wayans, gotta love them.
I'm not gonna lie. I mistakenly thought he said Wachowskis. I was about to say, "Hey, are you dead naming the Wachowskis?"
Well, no, because their last name's still Wachowski, isn't it? They didn't change their last
Yeah,
names.
but you refer to them as the Wachowski brothers, but they're sisters now. It's
you thought he said Wachowski brothers instead of Wayans brothers.
Yeah, which is kind of awkward, because it's like, yeah, I know they're trans and all, they identify as women, but a lot of their old films still say directed by the Wachowski brothers.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, that I actually got in trouble. I actually got in trouble because I was, I'll confess, I was shit posting on an art website, and I just made a stupid joke about how, because a guy was writing an art and he made a character that was trans, and mind you, this is a completely 100% fictional character, not based off anything. It was just a character this guy made for his universe, and all I did was jokingly say, proceeds to research their original name and identity, and everyone was like, "You can't do that. That's mean and abusive, and Crowley, you shouldn't even joke about that."
What, a trans person can't research their original identity?
No, regular people, but you see, the problem with the whole dead naming conspiracy is that a lot of the activists are more upset, that you're breaking the delusion, and not the fact that, hey, buddy, why are you looking up, my personal data? Like, no joke, there's actually laws that say you can actually get in trouble for dead naming, to which I want to ask, well, what if the trans person has friends and family that knew them long before, they transitioned, and they still remember them as that old person, what are they supposed to do,
Yeah, that's the person that's in their head.
Yeah, I actually read an interesting story one time, and it was about a trans person whose younger brother wasn't talking to them anymore, and they hated the fact that they were trans, and I think it was like a trans woman, and finally she goes up and says, "Brother, why do you hate me so much? Why is it?" And he says, "Because you killed my brother." "What do you mean?" Mean, my older brother was so great and all that, and then when you transitioned, you're telling me that brother I knew, who protected me from bullies and taught me all this cool stuff, you're telling me he was a lie and a fake and all that, basically, and it made the trans person kind of realize, hey, not everyone, just because someone, is uncomfortable with you, it's not necessarily because of transphobia. It's, it could be a deep personal root,
Yeah, I gotta think that all this stuff has to do more damage, more psychological damage to them than any kind of transphobia would, by all the things, by calling things dead naming and all that.
Yeah, like, and I'm sorry, but when they're talking about how it's like, but it prevents, the suicide rate, I'm sorry, but honestly,
They've tried studying the sources of trans suicide, and that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yep. Yeah, because, like, I'm not gonna lie, it's one thing that really triggered, some SJWs I saw one time, was that they did a study and they found out that, that people say, well, the reason trans people, commit suicide even when they transition is because they're so oppressed. It's like, yeah, but we've compared their suicide rates to people who, who also, were bullied, oppressed, and suffered genuine oppression, and we still don't see that same level of suicide numbers. We don't, You know, they've compared it to like blacks, you know, living in the South during Jim Crow era, and they didn't have the same suicide rate. So I'm sorry, but there's something going on, and because of this social justice hysteria, we can't do anything about it. You know?
Well, and they're just trying to just shove them all into one box
Yeah,
when
you know,
any sort uh, of a neurological thing like that is going to be extremely individualized. And for
yeah,
a
it's
lot of them, transitioning is the wrong way to go.
oh yeah,
And
you
there's nothing
know,
wrong with that. You know, for some of them it is, and good luck to them, but for a lot of them it isn't. And you try to force that on them, you just make things worse.
yeah, you know. I mean, I'm sorry, they love to deny it, but regret is there. You know, I mean,
Well, and
and
now
actually
that
meant
you
to,
have all of the adults who were forced to transition as kids now suing their doctors and parents, it's like pay more attention to them. Listen to what they
yeah,
have to say.
yeah. Like that one Canadian guy that was a really sad case in Canada. And the worst part is that people learned the wrong lesson because the only thing that gets talked about in that case with Canada is that it's like, see, this is why we shouldn't circumcise kids anymore. Well, yeah, that's valid, but there was a lot more that happened with that kid beside that. You know, the botched circumcision was just the start. You know, the real reason he ended his own life was because of years of messed up stuff. Because literally, a doctor abused him for the sole purpose of getting academic clout. You know,
Well, he had this theory that he was pushing, and he thought he was going to be remembered
yeah,
forever as the pioneer of this theory that gender is all in your head, and it didn't work out that
yeah,
way. And if it had just been a
yeah,
botched circumcision, I mean, it would have been bad for the kid. But I mean, you know, you can learn to live with things, but trying to force him to be a girl when he's a
yeah.
boy, you know, isn't that just as bad as, you know, what they're claiming about if you don't let them transition, then, you know, you're well, isn't
Yeah.
that the same as forcing them to transition when they shouldn't?
And the thing is, that's the reason why we don't want kids and teens, you know, to have access to that transitional stuff. Because let's be real here, and you know, and I've told this, you know, to some activists online, and they don't get it. It's like, listen, do teens truly 100% know what they want to be?
Well,
Because
no,
look,
they
I don't want to
don't.
sound like,
An identity crisis and things like that, that's just a part of
yeah,
growing up. That's a part of puberty. That's a part of becoming an adult.
yeah. I don't want to sound like, you know, a grumpy old man, you know, and all that, you know. It is true what they say. Age kind of makes you wiser because, like, you know, as a kid, you know, you're so angry at your parents and you know the adults around you, and you're like, you don't understand what I'm going through and all that. And then you grow up and you realize, you know what? Now I understand why and why. You know, I thought I was important, but in real life, I was just going through that identity crisis phase that every teen goes through. You know,
Yep.
that's why I'm not gonna lie. I laugh at a lot of those, you know, r/Reddit stories about that, and they're like, "Well, you know, I might have this mental illness, or I might be trans because I'm having all these self doubts about who I truly am and all that." And I'm just thinking, that's what
That
every
yeah,
teen goes through.
that means you're
Yeah,
human.
yeah,
That's all that means. It means
yeah.
you
You
went through
know,
the same thing the rest of us went through.
yeah. You know, and in all honesty, that's the thing that you know really pisses me off about those SJWs. It's because it's like, listen, I do remember being a teen, and you know, teens are in that fragile place, and there's people out there that are saying, you know, we should have these adults, you know, who, let's be real here, some of them are kind of have a few screws loose themselves, you know, are teaching these kids and can lead them down a path that could ruin their lives, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's like,
And I mean, what's the difference really between that and like those religious nut bars who try to turn their gay kids straight?
yeah, you know,
Just let your kids figure out who they are. Don't push them one way or the other.
yeah, you know. I mean, yeah, Joe Rogan brought that up when he was I don't know if it was Adam Conover, but he did have a person that was all for, you know, kids transitioning and all that. And he says, well, why do kids need the hormones? Why do they need the surgery? If they want to identify as a kid as the opposite gender, just give them, you know, opposite gender clothes and let them explore themselves. You know, why do you have to chemically castrate them and put them through painful, intrusive surgeries?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, And then of
Wonder
course
if
they
we'll
talk
get
about, oh,
demonetized for this. We'll have to see what happens.
nah, we might, but of course then
Eh.
they bring up, of course then they bring up but the suicide rate and all that. Like, I'm not gonna lie, when you keep
But I
doing
mean,
that,
transitioning doesn't really prevent the suicides. Putting them in an environment when they're not bullied doesn't really prevent the suicides. There's something else going on. And if
yeah,
you really care about these people, you'll put your political agenda aside and
yeah,
try to
and
use the science to figure out what it is.
yeah, yeah, let neurological scientists understand, the concept of, understand, what's going on in there because we can better help them.
Yeah, I mean, because, I mean, yeah, you've got body dysmorphia going on. It's not the only kind of body dysmorphia, but it's a pretty significant one.
Yeah,
And then there's, other psychological body image things that are
yeah,
going on and identity. And I think a lot of it probably is cultural because we shove kids into roles that say, like, if you're like this, then that means you're a girl. And like, well, I'm like that. Does that mean I'm a girl? Well, no, it just means that you like certain things. You want to dress a certain way. That
yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean you're a girl. It just means we've kind of shoehorned people into that category. And maybe we should stop the shoehorning, but that doesn't mean we put you through surgery to,
Yeah, reminds me of
yeah.
this. I remember this one funny edgy joke. I don't remember who it was, but it was like an online comedian, and he says you want to know why feminists hate trans women so much because it's only proof that men are better at being women than actual women are.
Well, that's why women are having all of these lawsuits to keep
Yeah,
the trans women out of women's sports because they're physically male and they're physically
yeah.
dominating, and it ruins the entire point of having women's sports to begin with.
And it's so funny, and it's so funny too, because I find it so ironic. It's like, if a girl, likes girly girl stuff and she likes dressing pretty and pink and being a girl and all that, she's seen like, oh, you're giving into the patriarchy by going through the stereotypical, model of a beauty. But when a guy, dresses up in drag and he dresses up the exact same way, it's like, good for you. You're so brave in breaking gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so a guy can do that and it's fine, and fine, but if a woman does it, yeah. And you wonder why some of those feminists don't like the trans community.
Yeah. Yeah. And Finding Zenithian says Dr. Deborah So would approve of this stream, but I don't know who that is either.
Mm.
Odyssey is silent.
Yeah, transphobia. It's basically the fascist of the LGBTQ plus activist word.
It's another one of those words you throw out so you don't have to think about the issue.
Yeah,
That's the whole point of those. Stop thinking and go along with our political narrative.
yeah. Although a funny thing about phobia, this wasn't about trans people. Like, I think it was aimed after, like, it was like a comedy, and it was about a guy who's a racist, and he's a racist towards certain demographics, and someone accuses him of being a xenophobe, and he's like, I'm not a xenophobe, and they're like, yes you are, you hate you hate Mexicans and all that. And he's like, no, see, that's it. I hate Mexicans. A phobia is an irrational fear. I'm not afraid of them. I just hate them.
That's what a lot of the religious notes were saying about homophobia. I'm not afraid of gay people.
Yeah, I just really hate them.
I just want to stop them from being gay people, and I want to push them out of
Yeah,
society. Yeah.
I want to convert them, and if they refuse to convert, I'm going to tell them they're going to burn in hell. Yeah.
And then they get caught with male prostitutes.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Hmm. Are you sure you're not just regressing? Socially, you're not just mentally projecting, sir.
A lot of the ones I wonder about, I especially wonder about it because there are a lot of people nowadays who are just going crazy about pedophilia. When, if anything, statistically, your kids are much safer from pedophiles today
Yeah.
than they were in like the 50s. But like there are people out there like pedophiles are everywhere. Those are the ones I got to worry about. The
Yeah.
more they screech about pedophiles and the more they want to stop this and stop that because pedophilia, the more I want to keep them away from my kid. I mean, my kids are grown, but still.
Though to be fair, there are some issues out there that are making me raise eyebrows.
Yeah.
Yeah, like teaching that one book, in school, and it was literally teaching, children about sexual positions and all that. That's another thing too I hate is when they're like, "Oh, you're just being paranoid. Schools aren't sexualizing children." It's like they've been caught
Yeah.
showing a a book to small children, showing them sexual positions. That's not being paranoid. That's a genuine concern. If I was a parent, I'd be like, "Hey, why are you showing that to my 6-year-old kid? Are you teaching them about, oral sex? Why are you telling them, what analingus is? Why are you telling them that? Shouldn't you be teaching them how to write and how to spell L and do math? Wait till they're older before you start teaching them about that,
Yeah. So it is. That's
And
just like when I think this was in Florida where they said, "Oh, well, just let them declare they're a different gender and they can go into the girls' bathroom." It's like, if you do that, then what's to stop a male from just saying they're going in and raping the girls? And then they screamed transphobia and pushed it through. And guess what happened? Girls started getting raped by
oh
this
yeah,
one supposedly trans person.
oh yeah,
If they were even really trans and not just using it as an excuse or whatever.
I mean, that's another thing. That's another thing that those activists need to realize. You got to call your own side out. If one of your people is saying, I should be allowed to do this with really small children, you need to be like, you need to stay away from us. In fact, stop coming to the meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay to dissociate with people on your side who are not good representatives of your side.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not admitting a failing of your side. It's just the opposite, in fact.
I mean, yeah, fun fact, I'm bisexual, and I've been seeing a lot of YouTubes lately from bisexual and gay people, and they're saying that, they're saying, I'm sorry, like, because I have friends who are trans and all that, but I think the trans activists, it's getting out of hand, and they're advocating for some pretty messed up stuff,
In fact, we have gay and trans people on the Discord, and guess what? They agree with us about it.
Yeah,
on both this Discord, the Bogosity Discord, and over on the Lord Killian Discord.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of when there was like a meeting, and all that, where like, where like someone secretly recorded it, and like the leaders were telling them, "Oh yeah, and by the way, don't call a person a pedophile. Call them a person who's attracted like to young or something and all that."
A minor
like,
attracted person.
Yeah, it's like that's still,
Look, I don't care who you're attracted to. I don't care about what you think about in your head. I don't care about what pictures you draw. Just don't actually hurt any minors, and I'm cool.
I will say though, the anti, minor crowd, can get a little bit overboard too, because like there are some people, that have admitted to me privately that they do find, minors attractive, but they have enough self-control that they would never actually carry it out. But the sad reality is that if you even mention that, everyone's going to be like, "Oh, this guy's a PDF file, throw him in prison for the rest of his life and never let him out."
Yeah, Finding Zenithian agrees with us over on Rumble. He says the war on Lolly and Shotacon, I've never heard that term, is also getting out of hand. It's fictional characters, no real children are involved. Plus, you're wasting time and resources that could be used to throw real criminals in jail. Yeah, including real pedophiles.
Yep.
So you say you want to protect the children, but you're taking resources away from protecting the children.
You know what I want? I don't know if it happened before or after, but part of me wonders if Bill Clinton would have signed Megan's Law into law if he had, if this was before the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
well, probably because again, people like that are the ones who are trying to cover for stuff.
Yeah, I just
find just because he was caught with Monica Lewinsky doesn't mean he wouldn't have otherwise been doing all the other stuff he was doing too.
Yeah, I just find it so ironic, like the law that that cranked up, the sexual assault paranoia to 11 was passed by a guy who was caught doing very, very inappropriate things to his female secretaries.
Yep. You
Actually,
got
I
you
don't
got
know
these
who.
big, marriage and family politicians who cheat on their spouses and
Yeah.
etc.
Actually, it reminds me of what one. I don't know if it was Joe Rogan, but there was one commentator, and they were talking about Hillary Clinton, and one of the guys said, the Monica Lewinsky scandal is what convinced him that Hillary Clinton was a willingly evil person in politics. And he's like, why? Why was that? It's like, because this guy cheated on her. He cheated on her multiple times and all that. If she was a normal woman, she either would have left him or would have demanded or would have kept a better eye on him. But she did nothing. And you know why? Because she wanted the power.
Well, it was a marriage of convenience.
Yeah.
That's all it was about.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know them personally. I've never met them personally, but from what I understand, Hillary, she's a really good actor, and she's really largely in it for the power and the prestige. That's why she
Oh yeah.
puts up with Bill and his shenanigans. Whereas any other normal woman would have been like, "No, Bill, I can't do this. I can't handle it anymore. We need to leave." You know,
Yeah, I mean a normal woman, you don't even want the fake stuff to get to them because
yeah,
you just don't want to get involved in that. And that's one thing that went out in the Trump hush money trial, where they basically said, contrary to the entire theory of the prosecution's own witnesses said that, yeah, Trump was worried about Melania finding out.
yeah. Yeah, which give him credit where credit is due. That shows that Trump does care about his wife. I mean,
Well, and
I
that
mean,
his wife actually would be, offended and probably leave him if he was caught doing something like that.
yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think the problem is that a lot of rom-coms they always portray like the cheating spouse as like a scumbag. When I've heard like from actual relationship psychologists, it's a little bit more complicated. Like we don't have to condone people cheating on their spouses, but we also need to remember there's other reasons why they're doing it.
Yeah.
It's like that
But
one South Park
generally,
episode.
I think if you're cheating, it probably means you're in the wrong relationship.
Yeah,
And so it doesn't necessarily mean you're a scumbag or anything, but it does mean, yeah, you should really reevaluate if that relationship is what you want.
oh yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've actually heard some couples therapists do say like, listen, we are not, and he like there's one couple therapist that says when I deal with couples, that are trying to recover after one of them cheats, and he says, and I do this respectfully, and this is not victim blame, but sometimes I do ask the person who was cheated on, and I ask them, why did you cheat on your spouse and all that. I sometimes will ask the other, party. It's like, hey, do you think that maybe they had some needs that you were neglecting,
The whole driven into the arms of another woman thing.
Yeah, I mean, and
Well,
again, we're not.
the thing about it is people are more likely to accept that when it's the woman that's cheating, but not when it's the man.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's like if a woman is sleeping with another man because her husband's neglecting her needs and all that, it's like, oh, that's so sad. But of course, when it's a man doing that, when it's like, well, it's just, honey, I have needs, and every time I try to get romantic, you're like, I don't want. I've got a headache. I don't want to do this, and it's like, oh, so you're just in it for the sex. It's like, no, it's just, I mean, like, fun fact, the irony is that, you hear these talk about these women saying we should go on a sex strike, for husbands don't do anything. And a lot of relationships therapists say, yeah, you do realize that's a form of spousal abuse, right? You know,
Yeah.
because
Yep.
having sex, is a thing couples do, and and doing it on a regular basis is a sign of a healthy relationship. And if you are denying them that when it's pretty clear they're like that, like listen, they're not saying you have to consent every single time, but you gotta plan it out at some point or another, because if you're outright refusing, that can lead to problems.
Yep.
Because I've heard that from some people. Like, if your spouse is constantly saying, "I don't want to do it, nah, not tonight," and it's happening over and over again, it starts making the person realize, "What's wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? Am I offending them? Am I sick?" And that's what leads to problems. It's
Well, and it can also lead to cheating because if they find someone who does find them attractive and they get
yeah,
that need for, for desire for someone feeling attractive, if they're getting that from someone else,
yeah.
then they'll be tempted to go to it.
Yeah, because and I can testify this too. I won't get TMI obviously because it's my personal problem, but I've experienced it firsthand. It's not about the physical sensation; it's emotional too. It's that idea that you're with someone you love and care for, and they're loving you back. And if they're constantly saying, "No, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that," it'll hurt you.
Yeah, it's a big hit to your self-worth.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I haven't experienced, that degree yet, but I can imagine it would make, a guy think like, what am I doing wrong? Did I offend her? Did I make her angry with me? What did I do wrong? And it makes a guy more tempted to want to just say, hey, well, here's this young woman. She really likes me, and she actually listens to me. It's tempting. I'm sorry, people. It's more complicated. I'm not a couples therapist, but just don't get your facts from rom-coms because that's not how they work.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
fiction. That's fantasy.
Yep. Yeah, the only rom-com, although it's technically not a rom-com, that actually kind of gets relationships right is Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah. Well, Jane
Because
Austen knew how to write. That was
yeah, because if I recall correctly, the woman and Mr. Darcy, it's not like they meet and they fall in love. Like, they actually get to know each other, and it even explores in the book. After they get married, it shows them developing. As okay, now how do we act like a couple?
right.
Yeah.
After they get married, they have to kind of learn how to be married.
Yeah, they have to learn how to balance their emotions and all that.
We got a few from Zenithian. I don't think I'll be able to get to all of them. Like I say, he's a typing demon tonight, but this last one is, I think the whole thing of the children crap reminds me of how Covenant House, New Orleans lobbied to ban 18 to 20-year-old women from working in strip clubs. And then there was that Moms Demand Action group, which isn't more astroturfing from Bloomberg. But anyway, they were saying, oh, people under 30 aren't mature enough to have guns. And that should be the age of consent for gun ownership.
Yeah, they're starting to sound like those ultra conservative Christians that are saying, now listen, if you get a boyfriend, you can go out to date and you can kiss and hug, but no sex. Okay, well, when can I have sex? Not till you're 40.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not that much difference, folks. I was saying
Yeah.
that earlier.
Yep.
Statists and religious nuts, peas in a pod. They disagree about what? They disagree about the subject, and they'll fight each other like cats and dogs. But fundamentally, the concepts and the fallacies and all that are exactly the same. Like exact. I don't even mean analogous. I mean exact.
Yeah. And then you actually research what they claim to find, and you find out that you're more knowledgeable than they are.
Yeah.
Like in Footloose, which, like you said, was based on a real life town. It's like a town that bans dancing because it's sinful to God. It's like, where does it say that in the Bible?
Well, and then you have that scene with Kevin Bacon where he's actually reading out the Bible, let him praise his name in the dance, and Solomon or whoever it was dancing, and all of these verses, and nowhere in the Bible does it say dancing is bad.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's partially why I became an atheist. Contrary to what some people think, it's not because I'm angry with God. It's because, listen, if you read the Bible, and yeah, there's good morals and passages in the Bible, but then there's also bad ones that don't make any sense and all that.
Oh, it was David. I remember now because he was like, and what did David do? What did David do? What did David do? And we went back to the Bible. That was a funny part.
Yeah, because many like a lot of atheists have actually pointed this out. The reason why people, some Christians say, well, you just got to read the Bible. It's because we do read the Bible, and I'm sorry, it's full of contradictions, people.
Yep. And if you try to use all of it as a as a blueprint for being a good person, and you'll actually be a pretty horrible person.
Yeah, you know, and like, you know, I remember seeing this one comedy one time where a person is like trying to teach. It's like if you actually read the Bible and really read the Bible, it'll turn you to God. Don't listen to what those, you know, racist pastors and preachers you know, say actually read the Bible. So the guy reads the Bible and he's like, wait a minute, I thought Christianity was monotheistic. Well, we are. Well, you see, I'm reading the Old Testament and the New Testament, and these have to be two different gods because
Yeah.
I'm getting mixed signals here.
Richard Dawkins did a lot of that in the God
Yeah.
Delusion, pointing out the difference between the God of the Old Testament and Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like because it's like the God of the New Testament is genuinely portrayed as being mostly nice, you know, and he does care about people, and he doesn't agree, and he does have to, and like he will discipline humanity when they need to, but he tries to make it fair. Whereas the God of the Old Testament, it's like what's this? That little, you know, someone in a random village insulted my name, burn the entire village and everyone to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's why a lot of like some atheists do point out that even if it's like if it later turns out that God does exist, that still doesn't mean the Bible's in the right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because an omnipotent, all-powerful being would be consistent 100%, and the Bible is not consistent.
God will be like, people were saying what about me?
I actually had a fan character for this independent cartoon called Hell of a Boss, and Hell of the Boss, and the characters are archangels, and their job is to prevent demons from coming to the mortal world and messing up with them. And one of them, which is Michael, he reads the Bible and he's like, "Wow, humans, ugh, I don't understand them sometimes." Though he does make fun of Sodom and Gomorrah because when he goes there, he tells the guys who are helping, it's like, "Listen, we got to capture these demons, but we can't let any innocent people get hurt in the crossfire. I do not want to see a repeat of Sodom and Gomorrah." And Gabriel's like, "Hey, that was an accident." Yeah, yeah, because the characters, they're basically like police officers, basically. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, not to mention some of the people that we're supposed to look up to aren't really good. Like I know how in religious class, we were taught, like guys like Moses were people to look up to, and then you read the original Old Testament and you realize, wow, Moses is a jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Like think of it from the Israel from the average Israelite's point of view. It's like the guy comes down with stone tablets, and he says these were written by God Himself. Now, now the thing you see, the problem with that story is that we're told from it from Moses' point of view. So it's like, well, yeah, it was clearly given by God, so why would so clearly if you rejected it, you'd have to be an evil person. It's like, well, no, because think about it. The people who were questioning Moses weren't there when it happened.
Yeah. That was what George Carlin pointed out. It was up on a mountain when no one else was around. God
Yeah.
gave these commandments.
I mean, I hope a fatwa doesn't get declared to me, but it's the same thing with Islam. I just want to ask those people. It's like, so Muhammad was a wise guy who found, Allah and all that. It's like, yeah, okay, so you're telling me an illiterate guy who had to get his brother to translate everything, he saw everything, right?
Yeah. Why didn't he pick someone who could actually write?
Yeah,
Who can actually write it down himself?
Yeah, or someone more influential who could actually reach more people. Like, that's another thing too. Like, why is it always like, a common sheep farmer that can barely spell his own name that's speaking the message? Why not reveal himself to why didn't God reveal himself to I don't know, like a king or some primitive priest, who had a lot more influence over people?
Well, I mean, at least Muhammad was smart enough to dictate it to someone. Jesus was like, well, I'm not even going to bother writing it down. I'll just say it to some people from a hill. Maybe someone will write it down at some point next century.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing too that many people fail to realize. A lot of the quote unquote prophets, they wrote their passages like centuries after Jesus supposedly lived, you know.
Yeah, like
Like,
Matthew wasn't written by Matthew. There are
yeah, like,
people who will swear up and down that it is, and you try and explain that it isn't, and
yeah.
they'll attack you for it.
Like, I don't know what your camp it is. I'm in the camp where I do think Jesus was a real person. I just don't think, he was, that magic,
Yeah.
thing and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's reasonable to conclude he was probably a real person because
Yeah.
the Christians showed up a little too quickly after he would have lived just for him to have been made up out of whole cloth.
Yeah.
But it also wasn't at all unusual for someone to all of a sudden, at that time have, within a decade or two, have myths pop up about them. And
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Michael Shermer of Skeptic Magazine pointed out there's lots of people throughout history that are like that. There's people that have popped up and they're sages and they develop followers, and after they die, their followers go on to say, "Oh yeah, this pastor, he did all this great stuff. He rose the dead. He walked on water. He could pass through walls. He could do all this." And this isn't Jesus. This is another guy they're talking about.
Well, like I think Apollonius was actually a contemporary of Jesus, so that was around the same time, and a lot of the stories were told about him.
Yeah,
And Finding Zenithian says in his Zenithian series, the main villain Remus was based on the God of the Old Testament. Yeah, that's a good villain. Yeah. And in the demon lands, there are good demons, bad demons, and neutral demons. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, why would demons, if demons are all about carnal desires, why would they all be into like vicious torture? Why wouldn't they be like party animals?
Yeah. I still wish I could animate or draw because Fighting Zenithian, I know what it is, but I had this really nice idea for like a short little film, which is about, that whole story about, Jesus being out in the desert, and the devil comes to him. And the joke I'm going to have is that, the devil is actually bringing up some pretty valid points and all that, when he talks about how, if you're the son of God, why don't you turn rocks into bread and all that? And Jesus goes, "Man will not live on bread alone, Satan. You won't tempt me." And Satan's like, "That's not what I'm saying, buddy."
I'm like, dude, you're hungry. Eat something.
Yeah.
Worried about you.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you're anorexic here, man. I think you got an eating disorder.
Yeah. Like, I saw this really cringy. Now, granted, it was a Jehovah's Witness propaganda where they were telling that story. And in the animation, they portrayed that every time, Jesus, deflects, Satan's, questions, that's portrayed as a victory, and Satan is angry because it's like, oh, he beat me. Whereas in my story, Satan's like, no, Jesus, you're misunderstanding. You are completely misunderstanding what I'm doing, and every time I'm bringing up a point, you keep deflecting it and shifting the goalpost.
I mean, I might get blamed for saying this, but you say you can't draw, but I mean, if you could learn how to work in AI to be able to sufficiently describe it, learn how the software works, which is a whole different skill thing in and of itself, especially if you wanted to do it consistently across comic panels.
Like, it's another...
But,
like,
I mean, you could do it without, specifically having to learn drawing skills if you don't have a talent for that.
Yeah, it's another portrayal of Satan that a lot of people get the interpretation wrong. I don't know if you heard the film. It has, I think it might have had Keanu Reeves in it. It's called Devil's Advocate. Where he was played by Al Pacino, and Al Pacino in that one, he gives this really long rant about how God, gives you these contradictory laws. And like, I've seen tons of reaction videos of it, and like, everyone's saying, "Oh yeah, that's clearly Satan deceiving you. He's trying to lie and say, I'm one of you, that's why you should obey me," and all that. When in the film, basically he's saying the reason why he's the real humanist and God is a psychopath is because he's honest about what he does. He tells Keanu Reeves' character, "Listen, I told you exactly what you're going to get from the deal, what the cost is going to be, and I gave you plenty of opportunities to back out, and you rejected all of them." And then he goes, "It's like, what are you holding that burden for? God, let me tell you something, buddy. I can't say the exact quote, but it's really powerful. You should look it up. It's like, I've been here since the beginning. You want to know something about God? He gives you all these emotions and feelings feelings, and he tells you you're a sinner, and I swear, for his own pleasure, he gives you these contradictory rules. He's an absentee landlord. Lord, look, but don't touch. Touch, don't taste. Taste, don't swallow.
Yeah.
That's the whole point he's trying to make. He's trying to point out, listen, it's like, yeah, I'm going to give you into your Carl designers, and it's probably not going to end well for you, but I'm open about it,
So
I don't
Darius
give
has
you-
another super chat. He wants to know, why is libertarianism been so damn unpopular? Well, because the people in power don't like the idea of them not being in power anymore. And, they control the media and the schools and everything. So you actually talk to people and tell them what libertarianism is. They go like, well, that doesn't sound so bad. Yeah, and people are taught they need the government. Yeah, in schools, because they're government schools. That's what they are. But I mean, with the AI thing and the elitists always come back with, just pick up a brush. Some people don't have a talent for that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just like some people don't have a talent for playing the piano. But what if they've got an idea for a work of art or a comic or something like that? And don't give me this, they're taking jobs away from artists. If Chris could afford artists to do it, I'm sure he would have done it already. But AI, if he can figure out how that works and figure out how to work that might unleash his creativity. And who knows, might actually be some good stuff being developed out there. So everyone just needs to get over this phobia and this insanity about AI.
I'm back. Sorry, my mom wanted me.
That's okay. Alden Day says, do you think women are being more altruistic is why they are less likely to support the free market? I mean, it's not really altruism when you're going to the government, is it?
Yeah,
they've just been misled to think, oh, well, that's the only way to end it. If you're a libertarian, then you're just selfish and you don't want to do anything. When if you look at it, that when they did polls on like, how do you feel about welfare? And then they look at how much they give to charity. The people who don't like welfare are much more likely to give to charity as a proportion of their income. The people who support welfare and advocate welfare don't give that much to charity. That goes back to the Ebenezer Scrooge thing we were talking about. That's exactly how Scrooge was at the start. He was like, my tax money is going to welfare. So why should I pay
the only difference is that in a way Scrooge was honest,
Yeah, he was honest about it. Yeah.
Yeah, he said, I'm not giving money to the people are like, well, why don't you give money to the poor and help those that are in need? And he's basically like, I pay taxes, that's the reason why he brought the workhouses and all that. He's like, he's like, look, I pay taxes, and people like, oh, but those places are awful and all that. Well, then that's Parliament's fault, not mine.
Well, and that wasn't even really what they said. Is like, well, why don't they go in the workhouses? And the guy was aghast, and they're like, they would rather die. And Scrooge says, well, let them die and thus deplete the surplus population. People get that wrong. He wasn't talking about poor people in general. He was talking about poor people who didn't want to work.
Yeah, in fact, that was a common belief back in those days. In fact, many there was even a famous English pastor, who did a lot for charity. Even he said that at one point,
But that was what he meant by the surplus population, people who would just take the charity and take the food, but not work to give anything back.
Yeah. And like, I'm sorry, but the more I read about A Christmas Carol and all that, like, don't get me wrong, I still feel bad for Tiny Tim and all that, but Bob Cratchit, I don't think he's as sympathetic as people think he is.
I mean, Dickens didn't really write kind of the two-dimensional characters everyone else portrays them to be.
Yeah.
You know, Bob Cratchit and Fred and all of those, they're, you know,
Yeah,
they're
you know.
multi-dimensional characters. They've got different sides to
Yeah,
them.
you know. I mean, I've actually remember reading somewhere that many people have pointed out that Bob Cratchit, you know, I mean, he actually makes pretty decent money for the time. He actually makes more money than what the minimum income was back in those days. And some people have actually pointed out that the reason why Bob Cratchit's family is kind of not in the best situation is because he's not he's not very frugal with his money, you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Like he spends a lot of money on a goose for turkey for Christmas dinner when a chicken would have been cheaper and would have provided the same sustenance and all that, you know.
And would have saved him money for later. Yeah.
Yeah, you know. That's actually another thing the George C. Scott version did kind of well. Is because a lot of TV shows and their interpretations they love to portray Bob Cratchit as being like this guy who's so poor he's wearing a paper thin blanket and he's got a dozen children and they're living in squalor, equally eating potato slices. Whereas if I recall correctly, he's actually pretty well off. You know.
I mean, yeah, he was pretty middle class.
Yeah, you know.
Hey, and Darius has a $5 super chat. This is a good question. Have you ever been betrayed by people with your same politics? I don't think I have. It happened after my mother died. This person hosted Peter Schiff and John Stossel. Yeah, I don't recall it ever happening to me.
Yeah. I mean, Peter Schiff, you know, he's not really a libertarian per se, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
John Stossel is more libertarian, but he's not like full on ANCAP. He's more of a small government guy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and he's honest about it. Like he says, you know, he believes we should have some government, you know, like to run the courts and all that, you know.
Peter Schiff is more of an economic libertarian, but I'm not sure about the rest.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't really call it a betrayal because I don't personally know him, but I do know I really got upset when I read about Penn Jillette and how he basically turned his back on libertarianism, and I'm like, Penn, what happened to you, buddy? You know, like he used to be so great, you know, and he was a big skeptic towards not just political, but also, you know, religious stuff, and now he's talking about like all this all natural stuff and all that. It all started ever since he went on that vegan diet. Like, no joke, there's a lot of people that are wondering, when he went on that vegan diet, did it, like, alter his brain chemistry that he pulled a complete 180?
You gotta wonder.
Yeah.
Because apparently, the guy who put him on the vegan diet, he was talking about it on his podcast. He was saying, you know that none of the essential nutrients for life are proteins. You don't actually need proteins to live. Well, your brain lives and dies on how much protein you give it.
Yeah.
You know, they might be talking about like how their cell metabolism works. You also got to remember like the RDA and stuff like that. That's just kind of like the minimum you need to avoid starvation. That's not even like the optimum level. But it's going to be some level above it.
That's actually a problem we see with a lot of communists. You know, they're always like, well, why do you need all these fancy smartphones and all that when you have this stuff? It's like, well, yeah, it's true. We don't necessarily need that stuff, but it makes life worth living, you know?
Yeah, and they think that the reason why we were able to develop the brains we did is because we were eating so much meat.
Yeah, you know,
and we got all those proteins. And that is an engine for, what is our brains are like a third of our metabolism or something like that.
You know.
It's a huge amount when you consider it's only about what, like 3 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, like to be fair, if I recall correctly, Penn Jillette said, you know, the only reason he went on the vegan diet at first wasn't even because he was going to stay with it. It was because he was told by his doctor he needed to really lose weight quickly. So he basically starved himself, and then I don't know what happened, you know. Yeah, he's not the same Penn Jillette that was on bullshit so many years ago. He also developed on Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, I think that was a big part of it too.
Yeah, like no joke. Like
we lose so many people either to Trump derangement syndrome or Trump fanboy syndrome.
Yeah,
we lose people to both of those.
Yep.
Trump's probably been the worst thing for libertarianism in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say he's been the best and the worst thing in the world. I think, I will say it's one of those things where I don't like Donald Trump, in terms of politics and all that, but I would be lying if I said I do like, how he kind of exposed, one thing I do like about him, why I think, his presidency was a benefit to America is because he kind of exposed the delusion,
Yeah. He
Yeah,
didn't
because
set
like
out to expose the deep state, but he basically showed them for what they are because he
yeah,
wasn't one of them. And he was like, hey, this politics is kind of a racket. I think I want in on it. But he's
yeah,
not part of like their clique.
yeah, he's not part of the clique, so it's just
He's
I think
out
it's
for himself and his family, and he can't be bought the way Joe Biden is,
yeah, and
Ukraine bribed Joe Biden for $5 million. What do you think Trump would do? Yeah, I want to bribe you. Here's $5 million. He was like, come back when you have a real number.
mm. I will, and also, another thing too is, is he also finally, I mean, granted, we've seen this forever, and this is something that people won't get over, but you got to remember, we were told over and over again, if he got elected, America would collapse into economic disarray, we'd be a totalitarian racist country, and he got elected, nothing happened.
Other than a whole
What I
lot
will,
of screeching for 3 years about Russiagate, which anyone with a brain could tell from the start was a load of crap.
what I will say, though, another, oh crap, I just had a brain fart, what was I gonna say? Ugh.
Yeah, Fighting Zenithian says Penn and Teller Bullshit was one of my favorite shows. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it actually makes me kind of sad because especially when you hear what happened to Penn Jillette, I don't know what Teller's views are. He's a little bit more quieter than
Yeah.
Penn.
But he from what I understand, he's still libertarian.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened to Penn.
Yeah. Yeah, Teller, I don't know what happened to him. And believe it or not, yes, Teller can talk. If you look it up, you will see. Yeah, you will see Teller talking.
He talks a lot. He just doesn't talk as Penn and Teller because that's part of the shtick. But yeah, he talks a lot.
I've actually heard, according to an interview with Penn Jillette, they said the reason why they did that is because in real life, Penn is actually, up until recently, he was a very quiet and reserved guy and didn't talk a lot. And Teller was a big chatty Cathy and all that. So they thought, hey, how about we switch it? When I'm on stage, I'm the guy who never shuts up, and you're the guy who never talks.
Well, after every show, they come out front, as the audience is filing out to talk to them and sign autographs and everything. And you can talk to Teller and he'll talk up a storm. And he loves talking with the audience about stuff, when they come out after the show and they're no longer on stage as Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and Penn's just like, yeah, thank you for coming to the show. Here's your autograph, like that,
Penn will talk back to you. He'll keep up his own in a conversation.
Yeah.
It's just Teller doesn't talk on stage, won't shut up off.
Yeah.
Not that you want him to. He's a really interesting guy, but yeah.
Yeah.
Penn actually had him on the podcast a few times to just talk with him for an hour. Look up Teller Speaks.
Yep. Also, another thing, if I recall correctly, is that while they are on good terms with each other, and they do, and they do have, and they are, really good acquaintances, they don't really consider each other friends, like close friends,
Well, because it's like Penn said, what are you supposed to do? And it's like, afterwards you say, okay, what'd you do today? I was with you all day, you idiot.
Yeah.
You kind of need to go your own separate ways and spend time with your family and loved ones.
Yeah, like Penn Jillette has cleared up, like he says, like, contrary to popular belief, we're not unfriendly with each other. We're really friendly with each other. And I guess you could call us friends. We just don't really hang out outside of work, Well,
because they spend so much time together when they're working.
Yeah, Yeah, like he says, like when we don't have any tours or we're not playing on a show, Teller's off with his family doing his own thing, and I'm off with my family doing my own thing, we still call each other every now and then, and say like, hey, how's it going? What's going on?
Ray Mayo says, what happened with Penn Jillette? We're talking about the fact that he's not libertarian anymore.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm gonna say he's not even not much of an atheist anymore, because he's even starting to fall for some of, the alternative medicine crap too. You know,
Yeah.
basically what happened is that sometime I think like around like 10 years ago or so, he was told by his doctor, because let's be real here, for most of his life he was a big guy, you know.
Yeah.
He was a pretty big guy, you know. He admitted he loved to eat, you know. And finally his doctor told him, hey, Penn, you know, you've got, you know, some heart conditions, and you need to lose a lot of weight or else your life's not gonna be cut a little short. So Penn, in order to lose a lot of weight quickly, he went on this vegan crash diet and starved himself. And after that, something changed with him. He's now no longer a libertarian, and now he's basically, you know, what he
He's a
sought what he
vegan,
sought
yeah.
to destroy. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I don't know what happened with him. You know.
I don't know. It would be
Yeah,
interesting to get more details on it, but it's
yeah.
8 o'clock, so we need to wrap this up. So any parting thoughts?
No, I'm good.
All right, well,
Yeah, my mom's home and she's making dinner now. So
okay, well, go enjoy dinner. Thanks for joining me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I just wish it wasn't so freaking expensive these days.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel you, man.
yeah.
I
And the
feel you.
worst part is that people aren't getting it. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Oh, it's the
The
oh, it's the
government should
company.
do something. The government is the reason for it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want prices to go down, here's what you need to do, people. You need to go to the Federal Reserve, take a giant sledgehammer, and smash the printing machines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
Fed. That would do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
stop the deficit spending.
Yeah.
That's what's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so thanks for joining me. Thanks for everyone in the chat, Mr. No, Alden Day, and everyone else. Thanks for finding Zenithian for being our Rumble connection. Especially thanks to Darius for all the super chats. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay strong and be free.